Hello, you're watching Daybreak on A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and let's take a look at the top stories shaping today's global agenda. The United States says progress is being made on reopening the Strait of Hormuz, while Iran denies direct talks. Ukraine's capital is under Russian attack, with overnight strikes killing and injuring civilians. And the European Union is backing Spain's response to the migrant crisis in Ceuta, calling for a united approach to migration. The United States says progress is being made toward reopening the Strait of Hormuz, while Iran insists negotiations are only taking place with Oman and denies direct talks with Washington. With mediators working to ease tensions, uncertainty remains over the next steps in restoring maritime traffic through the strategic waterway.
Iran says negotiations with Oman on reopening the Strait of Hormuz are making progress, raising hopes of easing tensions and restoring traffic through the key energy route. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghei says the talks are focused on establishing safe shipping routes while protecting the interests of both countries. Regional officials say the proposed arrangement would allow ships to enter the Persian Gulf through an Iranian-controlled route and exit through one managed by Oman, though no final agreement has been reached. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says discussions are moving forward.
I think that there's a conversation and negotiation that we are involved in between Oman and Iran on how more ships can be able to go through there safely in the short term as we move towards these longer term talks about denuclearization. And suffice it to say, there's been progress made in those talks, but not finality yet. We're hoping that will happen very shortly.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says a breakthrough could come soon, adding that reopening the waterway would restore freedom of navigation and help stabilize global energy markets. However, Iran denies direct talks with Washington, saying negotiations are only with Oman. Qatar says it's working alongside Oman and Pakistan to support mediation efforts. Meanwhile, the US military has used a significant portion of its long-range precision missile stockpile during the Iran war, raising concerns over future readiness. US officials say Washington can resupply and maintain its military capabilities. The Strait of Hormuz normally carries around 1/5 of global oil and gas shipments, making any agreement to reopen the waterway significant for energy markets.
The Pentagon has rejected reports claiming U.S. missile defense stockpiles have fallen to dangerously low levels. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth dismissed the claims in a post on X, calling the report false and criticized CNN's coverage. The media channel, citing U.S. military sources, reported that key air defense systems had been significantly depleted since the Iran war, with nearly 80% of THAAD interceptors and about half of Patriot interceptors used. Pentagon and White House officials say the United States still has sufficient munitions and the capability to respond to threats. Global oil markets remain highly sensitive to developments in the Middle East, where tensions around the Strait of Hormuz continue to influence energy prices and supply. Fresh signs of progress in diplomatic efforts between the United States and Iran have eased fears of prolonged disruptions, prompting a sharp decline in crude oil prices.
Global oil prices fell sharply to their lowest levels in 3 weeks after renewed optimism over a potential diplomatic agreement between the United States and Iran. Brent crude and U.S. West Texas Intermediate both dropped by around 4% during Tuesday's trading, reversing earlier gains of more than 2% driven by uncertainty over the negotiations. By the market close, WTI had fallen 5.69% to settle at $75.77 a barrel, while Brent showed 5.26% fall to $79.36. The decline followed comments from Qatar and the United States, indicating that negotiations to reopen the strategically vital waterway were making progress. Qatar's foreign ministry said mediators, including Qatar, Oman, and Pakistan, were continuing efforts to broker a diplomatic solution. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said an agreement could be reached within days and noted that ships had already begun exiting the strait.
The Strait of Hormuz may be heading for a limited reopening as U.S.-Iran talks show progress through Oman. Oil prices have fallen on hopes of de-escalation, but shipping security remains fragile. To discuss this, we're joined from Seattle, the United States, by Shayan Arya, an Iran expert, human rights and political activist, and a member of the Constitutionalist Party of Iran. Mr. Arya, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you.
Thank you. Mr. Arya, let me begin with the biggest question. Do you believe we are genuinely close to an agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? Or are we seeing another temporary tactical arrangement rather than a real breakthrough? Even Washington says there has been significant progress, while Tehran insists that the discussions are between Iran and Oman, not Iran and the United States. Why are we hearing such different descriptions of the same negotiations?
Well, because both sides, they have different motives for this. And my gut feeling is that these negotiations, like the ones prior to it, won't go anywhere. One reason for it is that nobody knows in Iran, who is in charge in Iran. That's the most important thing. And who can deliver on the promises made to either Omanis or the US or international community. So no factions within Iranian government and the regime has been able to insert its will and total control on the whole situation in Iran. They are in disarray, their internal differences is escalating. There's a very powerful factions within Iran that they don't want to have any negotiations with America. They don't want to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. They are worried about Iran's proxies and so on and so forth. And then there are another factions that they know that the situation in Iran, economically, socially, politically, in all aspects is deteriorating. So they want to have negotiations with America and kind of put an end to this war and use their resources to at least stabilize their regime. So because of that, I have a hard time believing that these negotiations will not end up like the ones before. And somehow it's going to fall apart and will be on the same, routine of attacks by America and then stop negotiations. Iran cannot deliver, or somebody within the regime, they will do something. They attack some countries around the Persian Gulf, or they do something to sabotage this agreement. But we have to remain, and see what's going on, what's going to come out of it. But I'm not that optimistic about it for the reasons that I mentioned.
Mr. Arya, there are reports of a possible arrangement in which ships would enter the strait through an Iran-controlled route and exit through an Oman-controlled route. How workable and sustainable would such a mechanism be for Iran's perspective?
Well, from Iran's perspective, it will be a huge win if such an arrangement is there, because then they can proclaim that before the war, we didn't have such arrangements. We wouldn't have this much control over the Strait of Hormuz. We are able to force all the shipments coming through the channels that we are dictating. So it's a huge win for Iran if an agreement is reached like that. But I have a difficult time that over the long term, U.S. will agree to that, because that will set a precedent for a lot of other places, and that's a bad situation. And if something like that is agreed upon by Trump, he will be criticized in America, I believe, by a lot of people, because it gives total control almost to the Islamic regime in Iran.
So,
But we have to see, maybe.
maybe. So oil prices have fallen sharply on expectations of a deal. If Hormuz is fully reopened, how quickly could we see global energy markets normalize? And could this significantly reduce the economic pressure created by the conflict?
Of course. If it's open and oil starts to flow, it will have a great impact on the oil prices globally, and it will be a benefit to almost all economies around the globe, and that's one of the reasons I think America and Trump administration is trying to go through these negotiations in hope that they can reach an agreement, and this agreement and the strait is opened, and the traffic is safe and secure, and everybody is happy. But again, I have a very difficult time believing that that's going to happen. As I said, there are lots of people with very powerful inside the Islamic regime that are vehemently against such agreements, and also it will set a very bad precedent in America and around the globe. So we have to see. But this cycle of attacks and oil prices rising, and then stopping and negotiating, and then the price going down, we've been there before, and we've seen it several times. So we have to wait and see if it's another cycle, and is it another attempt by Trump to prevent oil prices to go above 100. If you notice, every time it gets close to 100, he stops the attacks. He starts talking about reaching an agreement. The price falls and it goes below 80 or something. Something happens. Another round of attacks starts, and then the prices keeps going up to around 100. Then he stops, and then he comes. We'll see if it's another cycle or whether it's for real. But in every attack and negotiations, what is happening is that Iran is in a worse situation, because there's a lot of economic damage that is being done to Iran. And while the negotiations are going on and the peace is not really there, Iran will not be able to, start recovering economically and in any other aspects. So America doesn't lose as much economically in these cycles, but Iran is every time it gets weaker, and their economy is going down the spiral. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Mr. Arya, we are also seeing the security picture spread beyond Hormuz, with a vessel reportedly sinking after being hit by a projectile near Yemeni waters, and renewed concerns about the Bab el-Mandeb. Could a conflict effectively turn the entire maritime corridor from the Gulf to the Red Sea into one interconnected security crisis?
Well, anything that happens in Bab el-Mandeb and by the Houthis, you can bet that Iran is involved. I mean, they don't hide it; they say it. In fact, those radical, faction that I mentioned, they openly say that we have to help our Houthi brothers to do the same thing in Bab el-Mandeb, and put far more pressures on the international community and on the marine traffic, and the oil prices and so on and so forth. So anything can happen. That's why I was saying that I have a hard time believing that at the end, U.S. will set such a precedent, because once you do that in Strait of Hormuz, then how can you deny that to Houthis or any other people around the globe not to do the same thing and ask for, permissions for them to go through the Bab el-Mandab or Strait of Hormuz or some other places. So I have a hard time believing that. But this Bab el-Mandab and Strait of Hormuz, it's obvious that Islamic regime is behind it. And anything happens there does happen because of Iran's green light. Houthis won't know. I have a hard time believing that the Houthis will do it on their own. They have to get the green light from the Islamic regime in Iran.
Shaya and Arya, thank you very much for joining us from Seattle and for sharing your perspective on these rapidly developing events. We greatly appreciate your time and your insights. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure being with you.
Now we have a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the rest of the global stories. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's have a look at those global stories. A series of explosions has rocked the Ukrainian capital Kyiv after Russia launched fresh overnight airstrikes, causing casualties and widespread damage. Both sides exchanged long-range drone and missile attacks, with Ukraine also targeting Russia's Tula region.
Russian forces launched an overnight air attack on the Ukrainian capital Kyiv early on Wednesday, killing at least 14 people, injuring dozens and triggering fires. Ukrainian officials say air raid alerts remained in effect for more than an hour. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said a warehouse near the city centre was destroyed, with rescue teams pulling 2 people from the rubble. He added that the strike sparked blazes at warehouses and storage facilities, while earlier reports that a 20-story residential building was on fire were later found to be incorrect. The city's military administration also reported an ammonia leak caused by the strike. Meanwhile, Russia said Ukraine carried out drone attacks on its territory on Wednesday. According to Tula Regional Governor Dmitry Milyayev, a logistics hub belonging to Russia's leading online retailer, Wildberries, was hit, injuring 1 person. The retail company said that staff were evacuated to safety and delivery operations had been redirected. Governor Milyayev also said 2 industrial facilities in the city of Novomoskovsk and the Uzlovaya district were damaged, along with 2 apartment buildings elsewhere in the Tula region. Both Russia and Ukraine continue to exchange long-range drone and missile strikes, with no immediate sign of a reduction in hostilities.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has condemned what he described as another deliberate Russian drone attack on a civilian in the southern city of Kherson. In a post on Telegram, Zelensky said a Russian drone targeted a man selling vegetables at a local market before striking nearby. The vendor survived but was injured. The Ukrainian leader accused Russian forces of deliberately hunting civilians and said such attacks have become a daily reality. The Ukrainian president called on the international community to increase pressure on Moscow. Russia's biggest online retailer, Wildberries, is pressing ahead with a major expansion in Kazakhstan. It's despite repeated Ukrainian drone attacks continuing to disrupt its logistics network. The investment comes as the company adapts its operations to keep goods moving.
Wildberries is expanding further beyond Russia with 260,000 square meters of new warehouse capacity now under construction in Kazakhstan. Trade Minister Arman Shakaliev says the facilities are part of a long-term expansion project and are due to be commissioned in the first quarter of 2027. The investment comes as the retailer continues to reorganize its logistics network following repeated Ukrainian drone attacks on its facilities inside Russia. Officials say Ukrainian drones struck 3 warehouses this week, including 2 operated by Wildberries. One caught fire near St. Petersburg, another was damaged in the Tver region, while a separate strike on an unnamed warehouse in the Moscow region killed 5 people and injured 10 others. Ukraine says it initially targeted Wildberries because of what it described as the company's role in supplying the Russian military. Moscow denies these allegations, calling the attacks on the retailer's facilities as acts of terrorism. Wildberries says more than a dozen of its sites have been attacked since the 18th of July. Founder and chief executive Tatiana Kim says the company is redistributing goods across its logistics network and working with the Russian government on measures to support affected vendors.
Ukraine's long-range drone campaign is increasingly targeting one of Russia's most valuable assets, its oil industry. New data suggests the attacks have pushed Russian oil refining to its lowest level in more than 2 decades.
Russian oil refining fell to its lowest level since May 2002 in July, after Ukrainian drone strikes targeted refineries, tankers, pipelines and port infrastructure across the country. According to Bloomberg, Russian refineries processed an estimated 3.6 million barrels of crude a day last month, around 1/3 below seasonal norms and well below the 5.3 to 5.6 million barrels typically processed during the same period in recent years. Rather than targeting oil fields, Ukraine has focused on refineries, where crude oil is processed into products such as petrol, diesel, and jet fuel.
Russia has declined in its capacity to refine oil. And so when refining infrastructures are hit, Russia needs to send crude oil, non-refined oil, crude oil, which is less valuable. And, it's more expensive also to have to deal with new supply routes. And so all this adds up in withdrawing assets from the war chest.
Bloomberg says Ukrainian forces targeted 18 Russian refineries during July and carried out at least 30 attacks on oil infrastructure, including tankers, ports, and pipelines, the second highest monthly total since the full-scale invasion began. If additional strikes linked to the Caspian Pipeline Consortium are confirmed, July would become the busiest month on record for attacks on Russian oil assets. Ukraine's campaign also shifted during the month. Early strikes focused on refineries, including Russia's largest facility in Omsk, more than 2,500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Later, drones targeted tankers, port infrastructure and pipelines before refinery attacks resumed in the final days of July, including reported strikes on facilities in Perm, Ufa and Ryazan. Analysts say the campaign is increasing pressure on one of Russia's most important export industries. Although Moscow can redirect some crude through Baltic ports, limited pipeline, storage and tanker capacity is expected to constrain its ability to offset disruptions.
A major rescue operation in the English Channel has again highlighted the dangers facing migrants attempting to reach the UK. Anita Sharma reports.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where another dramatic rescue in the English Channel highlights the dangers and the persistence of migrants trying to reach Britain. French and British rescue teams saved 157 migrants after the engine of an overcrowded inflatable boat caught fire Tuesday morning in the Strait of Dover. Earlier in the night, 5 people who needed assistance were taken off the boat and brought ashore in Boulogne-sur-Mer, but the remaining passengers refused French rescue efforts, determined to continue towards the UK. Just 5 nautical miles off the French coast, one of the boat's engines caught fire and the vessel rapidly began breaking apart. France's Maritime Rescue Coordination Center launched a Mayday relay, triggering a joint rescue operation involving French and British vessels and a helicopter. All migrants were eventually brought to safety and returned to France. The rescue comes just days after 3 people died attempting the same crossing and underscores the risks of crossing one of the world's busiest shipping lanes in overcrowded, fragile boats. Now, the timing is also notable. This comes just after the right-wing Reform UK party made an election pledge to launch, quote, the largest military operation in the English Channel since World War II to stop small boat arrivals from France. This week, Spain's North African enclave of Ceuta has also seen a surge in attempted crossings, a reminder that migration pressure is building on multiple fronts. The latest rescue in the Channel underscores a hard truth for European governments. Despite tougher enforcement and increased patrols, smuggling networks continue to adapt, and thousands are still willing to risk everything for the chance of a better life. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
17 migrants are feared to have died while attempting to reach Spain's Balearic Islands after a 15-day journey across the Mediterranean. Spanish authorities said 2 survivors from North Africa were rescued on Tuesday from a boat found about 13 nautical miles northwest of Mallorca. Both were taken to a hospital with signs of malnutrition and dehydration. The survivors said 19 people had originally been on board, although officials have not independently confirmed the reported death. A helicopter was deployed to search the area, while ships nearby were alerted. EU interior ministers expressed solidarity with Spain in an urgent call on Tuesday to address the border incident in Ceuta last week. More than 70 people died as more than 60,000 migrants surged into Ceuta by swimming around a seawall or breaking through a frontier fence between Morocco and Spain's enclave on the North African coast. Ross Cullen reports.
Well, ministers from around the European Union joined that call on Tuesday, including Laurent Nunez, the French Interior Minister, saying that we stand in solidarity with Spain and we support and hail Spain's management of the crisis. This is a far cry from the positions taken at the end of last week, 31st of July, 1st of August, with Italy so angry about the surge of 60,000 migrants into the Spanish semi-enclave of Ceuta that it temporarily suspended the passport-free Schengen travel zone agreement that it has with Spain. This is the EU-wide agreement, certainly continental EU. If you fly from France to Germany or take a train from Austria to Italy, for example, no passport checks when you're moving in the Schengen zone. Italy suspending that temporarily. Denmark and Finland agreeing with Rome. We heard even from France that said on one hand it wanted to offer assistance to Spain. On the other hand, it was going to beef up its security along the southern border. So this urgent meeting on Tuesday of Interior Ministers, a chance to clear the air, try to dial down some of that rhetoric. And I'll just bring you some of the statement they released after the conclusion of that meeting, saying that there was a common understanding of the need to continue relentlessly fighting migrant smuggling networks, reinforcing returns, strengthening EU borders and building deep partnerships with third countries. Ross Cullen, A News, Paris.
Most of the migrants who crossed into Spain's North African enclave of Ceuta last week have now left. But for many families in neighboring Morocco, the search for missing loved ones continues.
At the border between Morocco and Spain, anxious parents are searching for any news of children who disappeared during last week's crossing to Ceuta. One of them is the mother of 23-year-old Haitham al-Haddad. She has not heard from her son since he left on the 30th of July. The only sign he had reached the Spanish city was a video circulating on Instagram.
I'm dying of fear. I cannot focus at home or at work, nothing. I had a mental breakdown. I have diabetes. He is my only son.
Mokhtar said he searched hospitals and a morgue in Tetuan, but still could not find his son. Mohammed. Not every family was left without news. Mohammed Reda said his teenage son and daughter called from Ceuta after receiving medical treatment, food and clothing, and have stayed in touch every day. Reda said his children decided to leave after seeing Instagram posts claiming Ceuta was open. The posts helped fuel the mass movement by spreading misinformation about migrants' chances of remaining in the territory and reaching Europe. Spanish authorities say most of those who crossed have now left the enclave and returned to Morocco. Interior Minister Fernando Grande Marlaska said around 70,000 of the roughly 72,000 migrants had departed by Tuesday. He also told European Union counterparts the provisional death toll from the border crisis had risen to 75.
Europe's prolonged heat wave and lack of rainfall are driving major rivers to record lows. The worsening drought is now disrupting energy production, transport and water supplies, while exposing long-submerged objects and historic warnings of earlier crises.
A severe drought and successive heat waves are pushing major European rivers towards record lows, exposing long-hidden landmarks and threatening water, transport and energy supplies. In Poland, temperatures are approaching 40 degrees Celsius in the south. Sandbanks have emerged along the Vistula, while the San River has fallen to an historic reduced level. Drought alerts are in place nationwide.
The south part of Poland is very dry. We have 71 alerts, dry alerts in all Poland, and it's 320 stations, water stations, when we have the really low flow on the rivers. Even in 30 stations, water stations, we have the lowest ever level of the river.
Over in Germany, the shrinking Rhine has revealed a sunken fishing boat last seen in 2022, along with so-called hunger stones. The historic markers, including some dated 1857 and 1947, warn future generations of drought and possible famine. Further downstream in the Danube, sandbanks and an old bridge wreckage in Budapest have been exposed. Hungary's Pax nuclear plant, which normally supplies about half the country's electricity, is operating at around 10% capacity because of a lack of water for cooling. On Monday, the Prime Minister said the weather will change by Friday.
There are a few critical days left. Today and tomorrow are certainly that. I ask everyone to continue the national unity that has developed in the country. Let's do what our country demands. And it's good to see that there's already light at the end of the tunnel, because the meteorology predicts a cold front for Friday, and the temperature will drop significantly. Until then, however, there will be very hot days.
In Romania, authorities used controlled explosions on Monday to divert water from the Danube River, using rocks as a temporary barrier, towards the Cernavodă nuclear plant. One of its 2 reactors has already been shut down, reducing output from a facility that normally supplies around a fifth of Romania's electricity.
French authorities have detained more than 400 people, including 156 minors, over suspected links to wildfires since the start of summer. Interior Minister Laurent Nunez says the cases involve both deliberate and accidental blazes. Around 14,000 fires have been recorded across the country this summer, burning 120,000 hectares of land, according to the Interior Ministry. That's around 1,200 square meters. In the Southern War Department, around 1,000 firefighters are battling a blaze that has been burning for 2 weeks. 16 departments are under an orange weather alert, with high temperatures forecast to persist until Friday. Wildfires are also intensifying in western United States, leaving neighborhoods in ruins and stretching emergency services. An arson investigation is underway in Washington state, while another rapidly spreading blaze is threatening communities in California.
US authorities have arrested a man on suspicion of starting the Old Trails fire near Spokane in Washington state, which burned more than 10,000 acres on Saturday. That's around 40,000 squared kilometers. At least 700 buildings have been destroyed and hundreds more damaged, mostly in residential areas. Some 64,000 people were placed under evacuation orders on Monday. Aaron Farinacci has been jailed on a $1 million bond and faces a first-degree arson charge.
About 5 p.m. this afternoon, we executed an arrest warrant and search warrant in the city of Spokane, and we took 37-year-old Aaron Farinacci, a convicted felon, into custody on a single charge of arson in the first degree.
The causes of the other two fires remain under investigation. Officials said information from a witness helped investigators identify the suspect. The 3 Spokane area fires are the highest firefighting priority in the United States and remained uncontained on Tuesday. Authorities also urged people not to fly drones near the fires after illegal flights forced firefighting aircraft to remain on the ground on Monday. In California, hundreds of firefighters are tackling the Gan fire, which has burned nearly 6,400 acres. Evacuation orders remain in place for nearby communities, with the blaze still at zero containment.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will not withdraw its forces from current positions in Gaza unless Hamas fully disarms. Netanyahu pushed back against the recent ceasefire proposal backed by US President Donald Trump, saying the plan was not accepted by Israel and that his government had submitted its own changes. The proposed agreement called for Hamas to begin disarming, while Israel would hold attacks and start withdrawing from parts of the Strip. Israel and Lebanon resumed the US-mediated talks in Rome on Tuesday, focusing on border security and a framework deal aimed at reducing tensions along their frontier. The discussions cover Israel's withdrawal from southern Lebanon, the deployment of Lebanese forces, and the disarmament of Hezbollah. Washington says the talks are aimed at ensuring long-term security for both sides and strengthening Lebanese state control in the south. Hezbollah has rejected the negotiations, calling them a humiliation for Beirut. Centuries after it flourished on the Mediterranean coast, much of ancient Leptis Magna in Libya remains hidden beneath the sand. A renewed conservation effort is now offering fresh insight into the country's Roman past.
Libyan and French archaeologists have resumed work at 2 sites, the Leptis Magna and Villa Saline. It's after years of disruption caused by instability in Libya. The French mission began operating at the UNESCO-listed site in 1986, studying the ancient city's layout, harbour, baths, and underwater remains. Its work was suspended following the unrest that began in 2011. Only around a quarter of the 140-hectare city is believed to have been uncovered, leaving much of it buried beneath the soil.
The site, before its current condition, was covered with sand. This mission removed the sand to make space for the walls and the bath to appear in its current shape.
This year, teams are strengthening structures in the Eastern Bath complex and uncovering a pedestrian walkway that formed part of the city's original layout. Their research has also revealed that one ancient cistern is twice as long as previously thought, offering new clues about the district's links to the port and surrounding structures. The renewed conservation effort extends to Villa Saline, a Roman coastal residence known for its surviving artwork.
Villa Selene is one of the Roman villas that were spread over the Libyan coast, from Misrata in the east to Sabrata in the west. What is distinctive about this villa is that most of its mosaic floor and architectural elements are preserved. That's why when the excavation started, the archaeological department decided to use this villa as a model of Roman villas on the Libyan coast.
Conservators are restoring mosaics and murals, portraying horse racing, fishing and wrestling, alongside botanical designs and scenes from Roman mythology. Leptis Magna remains open to the public, while Villa Saline will remain closed until the restoration work is completed.
An Indian-flagged commercial vessel has sunk after coming under attack near Yemen. Everyone on board was rescued as questions remain over who was behind the incident. All 14 seafarers survived after the vessel capsized and sank in the Red Sea. India's shipping minister said the crew, including 13 Indians, were rescued by the Yemeni Coast Guard and taken to the port of Mocha. Yemen's internationally recognized government accused the Iran-aligned Houthis of carrying out the attack using an explosive-laden boat. The Houthis have not commented, while India's foreign ministry says it's coordinating with the Yemeni authorities. Now we have a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the key regional headlines. Welcome back and thank you for joining me this morning. Let's return to the region now. Jordan is set to host Arab and Islamic foreign ministers in Amman on Wednesday for emergency talks on developments in Jerusalem and tensions surrounding the city's holy sites. The meeting will bring together Arab and Islamic countries to discuss a coordinated stance from what Jordan says is an imminent threat of an Israeli takeover of the important Muslim site. Turkey will take part in the talks with Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan representing Ankara. Other participants include officials from Arab states, Indonesia, Pakistan and Malaysia, as well as a Secretary General of the Arab League. The Syrian military says it's deployed troops to the border with Iraq on Tuesday after raising its alert level and increasing operational readiness. Syrian media and regional outlets said troops were ordered to enter Alert Level C and return immediately to their units. However, the Syrian Defense Ministry has not issued an official statement explaining the measures, their duration, or whether they are linked to a specific security threat. The alert could not be independently verified, leaving the purpose of the highlighted readiness unclear. The conflict in Ukraine continues to put commercial shipping in the Black Sea at risk. In the latest incident, a Turkish-owned cargo vessel was hit by drones near a Russian port, reportedly seriously injuring 3 crew members and setting the ship on fire. Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Turkish authorities say another Turkish-owned cargo vessel was struck by drones near Russia's Black Sea port of Novorossiysk, in the latest incident involving commercial shipping in the region. According to Turkey's Directorate of Maritime Affairs, the Nadizhda was attacked on Monday while sailing from Novorossiysk to the Turkish port of Samsun. The ship was carrying 22 crew members, including 13 Turkish nationals. Russian naval units reportedly evacuated the crew to Novorossiysk, but Turkish officials say 3 crew members may have suffered serious injuries. The ship also sustained significant damage to its bow and accommodation block, while a fire aboard the stricken vessel reportedly continues to burn. Authorities also said rescue operations had been suspended due to the continuing threat of drone attacks in the area. The incident is the latest in a growing number of attacks involving Turkish or Turkish-linked merchant vessels operating in the Black Sea since the Russia-Ukraine war began in early 2022. Repeated incidents have heightened concerns that the conflict is spilling over into the Black Sea and endangering civilian shipping, despite efforts to keep commercial trade routes open. In a separate development, Turkish authorities said an aerial drone of unknown origin had been found in the Black Sea province of Kastamonu on Monday, after apparently losing contact with its operator. Emergency teams quickly secured the area before removing the drone for forensic examination. The discovery follows a similar incident in June when a fixed-wing drone crashed in the same province. Repeated drone-related incidents along Turkey's Black Sea coast have prompted renewed scrutiny of regional security as the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine increasingly spills beyond the immediate battlefield. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Georgia's ruling party has accused NATO of misleading the country and Ukraine for years of the possibility of future membership in the Security Alliance. Tbilisi Mayor and Georgian Dream Party Secretary General Kaka Kaladze said both countries had repeatedly been told that NATO's doors were open, but alliance officials were now suggesting membership was unlikely. Georgian parliamentary officials said that if NATO rules out admitting Georgia, the country may need to pursue a broader foreign policy approach. A planned power cable under the Black Sea linking Georgia and Romania has moved into its next stage of development. The project involving Azerbaijan, Georgia, Romania and Hungary aims to connect the energy systems of the South Caucasus with Southeastern Europe. Our Nini Nikolashvili has more from Tbilisi.
The company behind the Black Sea submarine cable project, Gecko Power, has confirmed it has now entered its detailed development phase. The decision came at the company's 6th board meeting and follows government approval of the project's feasibility study at a ministerial meeting in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku. With that approval in place, the next steps include conceptual design, engineering studies, and a procurement strategy. Work is also starting soon to hire contractors for a seabed survey in the Black Sea, a necessary step before any actual construction can begin. The project is a planned underwater power cable connecting Georgia and Romania, running about more than 1,000 kilometers under the sea and another 40 kilometers on land. It's designed to carry 525 kilovolts and move 1,300 megawatts, linking the electricity grids of the South Caucasus and Southeastern Europe. It stems from a 2022 agreement signed in Bucharest between Azerbaijan, Georgia, Romania and Hungary, aiming to bring renewable energy from the Caspian region into the European markets. The European Commission has listed the project as a project of mutual interest and set aside roughly 2.3 billion euros. That's more than 2.6 billion US dollars towards it. Gecko Power is also seeking a further European Union designation that could improve access to financing. The timeline stretches to 2032, and large cross-border infrastructure projects like these routinely face delays, cost overruns, and shifting political priorities. For now, this is a step in a long process, not yet a finished deal. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A-News.
Disruption in the Gulf, along with the war between Russia and Ukraine, is affecting energy supplies across Central Asia. As a result, Tajikistan's petrol production has fallen, while neighboring Uzbekistan is expanding domestic output to offset a drop in Russian exports. Sevil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
Tajikistan's energy sector has reported contrasting results this year. Gasoline production fell nearly 15-fold in the first half of this year, dropping to just 304 tons from 4,500. At the same time, crude oil production rose 9% to more than 10,000 tons. The sharp decline reflects Tajikistan's limited refining capacity and its continued reliance on imported fuel, much of it from Russia. Russia's fuel sector has come under growing pressure following a series of long-range Ukrainian drone strikes on oil refineries, fuel depots and transport infrastructure. According to the Moscow Times, the attacks have forced Russian oil refining to its lowest level in 24 years, while Moscow has reported fuel shortages in several regions. In response, Russia extended its sweeping fuel export ban through the 31st of January 2027, covering gasoline, diesel, marine fuel and gas oil to stabilize domestic prices and supplies following refinery disruptions. Against that backdrop, Uzbekistan is moving to strengthen its own energy security by expanding domestic production. According to a report presented to President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, demand for aviation fuel is expected to reach 375,000 tons on the second half of the year, up 27% from a year earlier, driven by growing international air traffic through Central Asia. State-owned Uzbekneftgaz says it produced 11.5 billion cubic meters of natural gas during the first 6 months of this year, while output of oil, diesel, jet fuel and liquefied gas exceeded targets. By the end of 2026, the company plans to produce 1.1 million tons of gasoline, 983,000 tons of diesel, and 310,000 tons of jet fuel, as Uzbekistan continues modernizing its oil and gas industry and reducing its dependence on imported fuel. Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan News.
More than 70 years after tigers disappeared from Central Asia, Kazakhstan has taken a major step towards returning the iconic predator to the region. Releasing the first wild tiger into the country, conservationists hope the long-term reintroduction program will eventually establish a self-sustaining population and restore a key part of the region's natural ecosystem.
Kazakhstan has released a female Amur tiger named Umit into the wild. The move is part of a landmark conservation program aimed at restoring tigers to Central Asia. For the first time since the Caspian tiger became extinct in the 20th century, the mammal was released into the Il-Balkhash Nature Reserve, her new habitat under close monitoring by conservationists. The reintroduction project is designed to restore the ecological role once filled by the majestic creature, which disappeared from the region due to hunting, habitat loss, and the decline of its natural prey. Scientists consider the Amur tiger to be the Caspian tiger's closest living relative, making it suitable for re-establishing a wild tiger population in Kazakhstan.
The Tiger Project is of great importance for restoring the ecosystem. As you know, the long chain of biodiversity is made up of various plant and animal species, and the loss of any single species can lead to irreversible processes.
Umit is one of 4 transferred from Russia under the long-term restoration program. Officials said the release of the remaining 3 tigers will depend on data gathered from monitoring Umit's movements, behavior, and adaptation to the reserve.
The habitat conditions for this tiger in the Russian Federation are different. Nevertheless, this is an area where its relative, the Caspian tiger, once lived. That is why we are more than confident that the tigers will feel quite comfortable here.
Although Amur tigers have no natural predators, they remain vulnerable to human-driven declines in prey populations and habitat quality. Kazakh authorities say rebuilding a self-sustaining population will take decades, with the restoration program expected to continue for at least another 25 years.
That was your latest news update. Thank you for your time and for watching Daybreak with me, Bakhtiar Sanov, and stay tuned for more updates ahead.